it's Lisa. I have two photos to scrap today that I have 3x5 landscape photos of having lunch with some friends. And the colors from the photos, what we were wearing, the way she had her table done, and the decor, everything about this just works perfectly with the Spice Market collection from Basic Grey. So these are the papers that I bought in that collection. One side of them, flip them over, at the other sides. And I want to use several of these papers. I think I'm going to cut them into strips. I had considered perhaps using this one for the background. It goes really well with the photos, but I want to use a fair amount of embellishment on this, and I think it will end up being a little bit too busy if I do that for the entire background. So I'm going to do a strip of that, and then for background, I'm going to use some cardstock, and I've looked at a couple of different ones. This is Soft Sky from Stampin' Up, and this is the new Coastal Cabana. Honestly, I'd rather use this one because it's not as much my favorite color, and I have several sheets of it. However, it's a little bit dark, I think, for these. It goes with the papers. What I want to do, though, is add a little bit of distressing to it. These papers do not have a lot of distressing, and I was very pleased about that when I received them. A lot of Basic Grey papers in the past have. These don't, so I can cut them up in strips and stuff, and I don't have to worry about some things having distressing and some not and trying to match it up. However, they do have a little bit, and they have in the background kind of a woven look to all of them. It shows up, I think, a little better maybe on this one. So anyway, if I just use this solid cardstock, it's pretty solid. There's not much going on here, so I think I want to add a little bit of distressing to it. I have a stamp from Stampin' Up called the Sanded Stamp. They no longer make this, but there are other stamps out there that give you this kind of look. Anything that will create a distressed sort of look, you can always add your own distressing, and I happen to have, actually I have the Soft Sky ink. I pulled out Pool Party. I have the Soft Sky ink, which is the same color as the background. If that's too light, I do have the darker Pool Party color that would work with that as well. Or you can use Versamark ink and just do a tone-on-tone that way. So I just want to do a little bit of distressing on this part, as it's going to be the upper part of the layout. My two photos, and then this area here, this is a 3x4, which could be one of those little journaling cards, or it could be one of these new wood cards that I have from Prima. These are ATC cards, and I bought them not really knowing for sure what I want to do with them, but I love wood veneer, and I just couldn't resist all these designs. I especially like the fact that this is etched in, they called it burnished, on instead of just printed on. So I think when I add inks and paints and stuff, it's really going to create some interesting effects. This will be my first one to experiment with. I went through the cards trying to decide, you know, which one I wouldn't mind messing up, and I like all of them. So I just going to go with the one that I think I would like on this layout, and hopefully it will work out. For the background for my title, since I'm using that for the title, I went ahead and pulled out some letters to make sure that everything will fit on here. I have this piece of chipboard from the chipboard collection, and I'm going to pull out some other pieces as well, but I thought I would really like to use this piece around the words so I can make sure everything fit here. And then my next challenge will be to figure out what color to color this with, and I have some ideas, and we'll get to that in a moment. So I'll be selecting some papers. The first thing to go down here, the first thing though I want to do is add some texture and interest to this top part of the cardstock. I'm using the Sanded Stamp from Stampin' Up. This particular stamp has been discontinued, but any stamp that gives you that distressing look would be fine for this. I'm starting off with the Soft Sky ink because I thought this paper was Soft Sky, even though it is Pool Party, and then I also had the Pool Party ink out, and I tried that. The funny thing is that even though it's Pool Party paper, the lighter Soft Sky ink actually showed up better. And now I realize none of them are showing up that well on video, and of course I didn't know that when I was filming it. But you can see the process, which is just to stamp the image over and over again. But in real life, it does show up. You can see that textured look behind it. So I'm doing the top, and I'm doing just a little bit on each side, or I will once I lay the photos out and kind of get an idea of how much needs to be covered here. The bottom is going to get covered up with pattern paper. Now I wanted to also add some distress ink to the edges, and I decided on old paper. Old paper, I think, is the first distress ink I ever bought. It's kind of a goldish color, and it's perfect with the pattern papers from this particular collection with basic gray. They look really good with that gold. Again, you'll have to trust me on that because as I realize these colors are just not showing up too hot on video. Now the next thing is trying to figure out the papers and the border stickers. And I pulled out some of the chipboard. I really felt like I had, since we had one floral chipboard, that I would use the other flowered chipboard pieces. But those were just, they weren't really quite big enough. And I had this big frame, and I kind of like that. I go back and forth a lot on this. I think the challenge with this collection is that I have so much of it. And this is the first layout I've done with it. And I'm just overwhelmed with so many choices. So I'm narrowing it down a little bit, and I'm just not quite sure. The flowers, some of them have some rust in them, some of them have some red in them. What I finally decided to do was to work on that wood card, that ATC card from Prima, and go ahead and put some color on it, and maybe that would give me a better idea of which colors that I wanted to work with. So I started by adding some distress ink, just sponging that over, and it shows up a little bit, but not too much. And it occurred to me that I could do the same thing with the wood that I do with paper, that we all do, taking our distress inks and adding some water to them. So I've got my craft mat here, and just putting some of this Victorian velvet, I believe it was, down, and put some water to it. And that looked really pretty, and it added a lot of you could see a lot of the little dots that were burnished into this particular piece of wood with that. But I wanted it a little darker. I'm also trying to create a shadow here. I'm taking the back off my piece of chipboard and laying that down so that I can have a shadowed effect. I'll actually put the chipboard on there a little bit to the side so it creates a little bit of a shadow. You can see some of that in the final thing. And I'm misting. I started with a cameo colored mist, and that just didn't show up quite as much as I wanted, so I decided to get bold and go with a red mist because my letters aren't going to show up very well on this. The red mist is called Overdue, and if I'd left it at one spritz, I think that would have been great, but I went ahead and did a second one. I did have a wet paper towel there to mop up some of the extra. It looks good, but it's a little bit too bold to me. And one of the great things though about mists is you can layer them. So to tone it down, I'm going to take some clay from Studio Calico and mist over the top. So I'm comparing that to the papers and then laying that chipboard piece there, and you'll see it kind of has a little bit of a shadow of the area that wasn't misted. So when I put all this together, it looks good, and you'll see some close-ups of this a little bit later on. I'm back to the papers now that I know what color that card's going to be. And that one paper, I loved it, but I just decided it was a little bit too busy with everything else. It conflicted a little bit too much, so I decided to use the back side of it, the rust. And I'm back to the chipboard pieces and considering other shapes besides the flowers, although I haven't given them up entirely. Kind of keeping them there to the side. I ended up with shapes that were not the flowers, and I like those. I'm having a little trouble up here in the upper left-hand corner. I try a lot of different things. I did commit to the sticker, or the border sticker that I liked the most there, that gold one. I spent a lot of time going back and forth on these. I actually even cut some of that out of the video. It doesn't seem like it. But what I finally got into was moving that frame up And instead of putting it up in the upper corner, kind of putting it there where the journaling was supposed to be, because I have another place I can put the journaling. And I really need something large down here in the lower left-hand corner to balance it. So I have a sticker that will work down there. I'm going to have to move my photo over a little bit. Fortunately, it wasn't stuck down too bad. I have a couple of extra pieces of chipboard that I thought I would add to this to sort of break up that large sticker flower, and then put something underneath the wood piece so it doesn't kind of seem like it's just there by itself. I added some brads. It really helps me to have 3 things the same in my groupings. So even though they're small, just 3 rhinestone brads from Stampin' Up! Are going to help tie all this together. I'm sorry about my head. I'm just poking the hole there beside of the corner of that ATC card and putting the brads in place. And I finally decided on the top to put it right in the middle of the piece of chipboard. And those work out really good. The only problem I have is I have too much space up there at the top. And I could put some more paper on the bottom and cut some of the top off, which is what I end up doing. I also felt like this was a good one to do some mist over the background, you know, the little droplets of mist or spray mist. I'm going to do the droplets of mist covering up the photos, and I do end up covering up the journaling there. Anything else on there, I don't have a problem with it getting a little mist on. In fact, it looks a little more natural if you let it get on some things that are not photos. Now the way I do mist is just take the sprayer out and then use it by flicking it straight down on the page and pressing it against my finger, just sort of flipping it there against my finger, and that takes the ink out of that sprayer and onto the paper. A little bit more area there to cover. This clay ink will dry and it'll soften quite a bit here in the final page.
Finally have this page done. Some pages come together really fast, and you have an idea and it just flows, and other pages are a bit more of a challenge. As I said earlier, I think the challenge here was that I had a lot of product from this collection. It was new to me, and I just was a bit overwhelmed with the choices because everything matched these photos and went with it. So, but I've got it down to some pieces that I like here, and it helped me to put the 3 brads here to sort of have some elements that connected everything, while, you know, I've got 2 chipboards and 1 sticker and they all match, but this sort of brought it all together for me. And I think adding the mist around the edges sort of softened the whole appearance of this page. So I got to use quite a bit of chipboard. And here's our sketch, and the thing that we really changed here is moving this element down to fill in this gap, and then putting the journaling down here, since I had quite a bit of space, because I had put my sticker down here, so it really looked like I needed something to sort of rest there, so the journaling fit in really well. So thank you so much for watching. I have a new newsletter that I'm offering, and you'll find a link to a blog post about that in the description for this video if you'd like to sign up. It contains an extra video each month, and this month is on misting. It's only available to people who subscribe to the newsletter, so I hope you'll take advantage of that. It's just like 1 email a month, so it's not going to bombard you with messages. And I also have some classes available as well, and you'll see some more information about that at the end. So thank you so much for watching.